So is it finally mirrorless good enough as a DSLR? Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thomas Love here from beautiful Vancouver, British Columbia, and today we're gonna discuss about the Nikon Z8 compared to the Nikon D850 because we don't know yet all the specs coming from the Z8. We can just guess them. We had rumors and leaked anticipations, but we know very well the Nikon D850. That was the point of reference for what concerns the prosumer DSLR from Nikon, and they still didn't match that quality with any mirrorless camera yet. And when I say they, I'm referring to Nikon, of course. So the point here that I want to make is as simple as the D850 was the top tech, the best camera coming out from a development throughout decades. So for the most of the last century, Nikon has been working on the F-mount glasses and on the technology for the DSLRs, and the Nikon D850 was simply the best out there with a stock 45 megapixel sensor and all the best things coming from its predecessor. So that was the top level, top quality for what regards the prosumer sector, despite also many professionals used it. The sensor was a great sensor. It's the same 45 megapixel sensor that we're having right now in the Nikon Z7 Mark II as an example, or almost the same, maybe not really the exact same sensor, but almost the same. And so it's comparable in terms of specs, and honestly I wouldn't understand why all the camera companies out there, starting from Sony to Canon to Nikon, they are trying to convince us to switch to mirrorless and to leave behind our beloved DSLRs. Now, full disclosure, I have nothing against mirrorless. I am myself using a mirrorless, which is the Leica Q2 at this very moment, but I had to force myself to get rid of my beloved Nikon D750 because I had muscle memory and I had such a big connection to that camera that I had to force myself to get rid of it. Otherwise I would have never started really using the Leica Q2. And now I'm glad I did because I'm using it with very good satisfaction at the moment. But it took a while for me to get used to mirrorless because I had muscle memory with the Nikon D750. I also had hearing memory because I could tell only by hearing the noise coming from the mirror if that shot was fast enough or if I needed to go faster for the kind of scene that I was going to portray. And so most of the times I was shooting with the f aperture priority, and then with just the two wheels, one in the finger and the other one in the thumb, you could adjust the ISO and the f aperture. And so to me that was a really good camera, but the Nikon D850 was even better than that. So that was the top tech, the best camera ever produced when it comes down to Nikon DSLRs. While right now, finally, the Nikon Z8 is supposedly matching those specs and that quality of level. Now, the Nikon Z-mount glasses are better compared to the F-mount glasses just because they are newer, it's a new project, they have a bigger mount, so there is much more light flowing in, and they have been developed in order to sustain and to resolve more megapixel coming in future, maybe 60, maybe 80, maybe 100 megapixel with future sensor, we don't know. So I'm not really in love with the megapixel race. I know other brands are all about it. Sony just announced the 80 megapixel micro four thirds new sensor that is supposedly being adopted by Olympus OM1 and many other third-party cameras, but apart from that, the megapixel count, it's nothing to be proud of, and it's nothing that will help you in your photography. It's just filling the same house with more people. So would you rather purchase your Nikon D850 that was the top development from the last century, from a few decades, or do you want to invest into the new tech with a Nikon Z8, which we are all waiting to be announced in a few days? So next Wednesday will be officially announced, and we don't even know whether it will be the Nikon Z8 or any other thing. Maybe it's an 8mm lens, we don't really know yet. When it comes down to a direct comparison spec to spec, my DSLR and the Nikon D850, they had 3D tracking that was fallible. It was far less reliable than the AF tracking that we're having nowadays in most of the cameras out there, and with cameras I'm referring to mirrorless cameras. But big advantage it had, you could point it to the very subject that you wanted to track. You are not supposed to use the arrows to switch from face to face, because maybe you have many people in your frame and you don't know which one the camera is picking up. Maybe you want to pick up a different one as a main subject, while back then with the 3D tracking you were just pointing it straight to the face that you wanted to track, and the camera was not able to track anything else. And so it was more reliable despite it was fallible. The percentage of shots that were in sharp focus was far lower compared to what you're getting right now with the AF tracking, which is an eye tracking or an iris tracking in most of the cameras nowadays. But the main difference that we have to consider when we're talking about DSLRs versus mirrorless is like comparing a full camera, as a DSLR was, with some help coming from tech, to a computer. A mirrorless camera is nothing more and nothing less than a computer that is able to take pictures. So the more settings you hand out to your mirrorless, so to your camera, in terms of tracking, white balancing, AI help, which are coming more and more, especially from Sony, the less you can call it a camera, because the satisfaction when you took a great shot with the DSLR was coming from yourself, 100%. You were the one who set the camera properly and pushed the shutter button at the very right moment in order to portray and to have that very scene that you're so proud of. While right now, if you have this impressive burst rate in most of the cameras, you can shoot like hundreds of pictures out of a minute, and then you just pick up the best one. So you didn't do anything, you just purchased a computer which is able to take pictures. And so it's not so easy to compare photography coming from back then to photography right now, especially because right now most of the cameras are more video centric, or at least that's what they are trying to push. So whether the Z8 would be comparable or better than the Nikon 850, I myself, I'm an old fellow, I would still stick to the D850 because it's a DSLR and it's the top of development from the technology that I grew up with. While right now, this new tech, the Z-mount, the burst rates, the AF tracking, so on and so forth, I have nothing against it. I'm still not so used to it yet. And I'm sure in 10 years, AI will do everything by itself. We will just need to hold the camera, or whatever will be called, mirrorless, computer, whatever the name will be. I'm quite sure about it. And then AI will do a far better job than myself, because probably the number of calculations and changes that the AI will be able to do before taking a picture will be not even comparable to what my experience would suggest me. Nonetheless, it will not make me proud of that picture because I am not taking it, the AI is doing it. So that's my main point here for discussion. And don't get me wrong, I will be more than happy to have and use a Nikon Z8. When it comes down to glasses, now the Z-mount is a brand new development. It's able to resolve far more megapixels, it has much more light coming in, so on and so forth. The lenses are smaller, they are lighter, they have a better resolution, better coating, whatever. But you had plenty of alternatives with your F-mount. You had alternatives from third parties as well as from decades of development coming from Nikon. So I don't really know how many dozen of glasses were available for the F-mount, while right now for the Z-mount, of course, there are far less. It's coming, more or less. More of them are coming in the next few months, years, decades, of course, but at the moment, F-mount still had many more alternatives for you to pick up from. When it comes down to a matter of weight and dimensions, of course, the mirrorless wins. When it comes down to battery, I'm not so sure about it, because mirrorless, you will have to switch it on anyway before doing anything, while with a DSLR, just because you were using the mirrors, you were just looking straight out of your lens, and then eventually you could switch on the camera and it was not needed any booting time, because the moment you give the contact, it was on and ready to take pictures, and then you could snap it. So probably DSLR is still winning the battery count for how many photography, for how many pictures you were able to take with just one battery. I never had problems of remaining without juice with my Nikon D750. I would ask D850 users, especially after we're having the Nikon Z8 released and people are starting to using it, so that we can compare the specs. And then when it comes down to memory cards, a D850 used the SD UHS2, while right now with mirrorless you would go with CF Express, especially if you want to record 8K videos, which I still don't get what they are for, because raw 8K, we are talking about massive, huge files to manage and to color grade after shooting. So I still don't know why we are shooting 8K raw videos, but eventually you are able to do that. And then bulb mode with the DSLR camera is as simple as lifting the mirror and then taking it down, while with mirrorless, that's a lot of calculations involved. So it sounds like more gimmicky to me than what I was used to, but again, this is just myself because I'm coming from another generation. But guys, please let me know your 2 cents. We are all waiting for this Z8 to be released, but I would really love to have one in my hands, and then I will get the D850 and I will go out and shoot with them both and let you know what my 2 cents are. If I had to pick up right now, probably I will still stick to DSLR, because it's a matter of price, of course. Now the D850, you can have it for a bargain, and with the same price you are paying for your Z8, you will get the D850 and a bunch of lenses. And then the Z8 is really helping you if you are doing photography of wildlife, sports, wedding, where you have to actively track people or subjects or animals that are moving very fast. While if you are a landscape photographer, a street photographer, or any other kind of photographer, you don't really need to invest that much into your new Z8, despite I know, I do understand the latest technology, the latest model. It's exciting. It gives you pleasure. Not as much as the tactile pleasure I had while turning the wheels with the thumb and with the finger on my D750, but apparently the build would be magnificent. The Nikon Z8 is gonna be a great camera, a great mirrorless, a great alternative to other brands. And for us Nikon lovers, and I am really fond of Nikon, well, that will be the object of desire. So with that, I hope you got some value out of this video. If you did, please remember to like it, share it on your social media, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the new videos to come, and I guess I will see you later. Thank you. Bye bye.